Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to talk about things that you might find at the beach. No, we're not talking about a bunch of garbage there, empty bottles and things like that, or pieces of driftwood. We're talking about shells, or more specifically, seashells, although most people just say shells. Those are, I guess, the outer covering of certain sea animals. The animals have died, but they've left their shell behind, and a lot of people collect them, and they use shells for different purposes.
Yeah, I have a niece who loves seashells, but we just call them shells. It's not easy to say seashells really fast either. We have a very popular tongue twister in English. Sally sells seashells by the seashore.
So even you screwed it up there.
I did. I messed it up.
Let me try it and see if I can do it.
Okay.
Sally sells seashells by the seashore.
You have to do it faster.
Yeah, I got it right there, but of course I was going too slowly, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to say it quickly again, but that is a tongue twister. And yes, we're talking about seashells in today's program. I never really saw seashells because I grew up in a place that's far away from the ocean.
Yeah.
So, of course, when I came to Taiwan here and went to the ocean, I thought, wow, those seashells are really cool. My mother even collected them, and she brought them all together and put them in a lamp. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's like the bottom part of a lamp.
Oh.
It's made out of glass like a bottle. So she, of course, filled it with seashells that she collected from her travels all over the world.
Now, because I don't live by lakes, really, Tom, and you had lakes over by you when you were growing up, more than I did, are there shells that are produced by lakes?
Yeah, I can't remember what the thing is. They're kind of the size of your fist or whatever. But they're all over the place, and that's the only kind of shell there is, and it's kind of boring. But yeah, we did have shells, but not as many as you'll find by the seashore.
Yeah. So we're going to read through day one, guys, and then we'll be back to talk about all these different kinds of beautiful seashells. Have you ever stopped to admire the delicate beauty of seashells while walking along a beach? These natural treasures, which belong to animals such as clams, oysters, and snails, come in a variety of shapes, colors, and textures. However, they are more than just pretty souvenirs. Throughout history, seashells have served numerous purposes in human cultures worldwide, from practical tools to spiritual symbols. Seashells are formed through a natural process. They are the hard, protective outer layer of marine animals called mollusks, and are primarily composed of calcium carbonate. The shape, size, and color of a seashell vary significantly, depending on the species and its environment. Some seashells are smooth and shiny, while others have sharp ridges or curved patterns. Environmental factors like water temperature, food sources, and predators can also impact their development. This variety makes seashells fascinating for both collectors and scientists. Beyond their appearance, seashells have held deep historical and cultural significance in human history. In Greek mythology, the goddess Aphrodite is said to have emerged from the sea on a giant shell. This image has become a popular symbol of beauty and love. Moreover, seashells have been used as currency in many regions. Cowrie shells, in particular, were valuable trade items across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands for centuries because they were light, durable, and widely available. In addition, many indigenous communities created tools and even musical instruments from sturdy seashells. For instance, a conch shell, typically from a large sea snail, can be made into a wind instrument.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. We're going beyond the beach, the surprising world of seashells. So, of course, there are lots of things to talk about if you want to talk about the beach, but we're talking more than just about the beach. We're talking about seashells. And yes, indeed, seashells can be quite cool. There are lots of different varieties of seashells. See, I'm screwing it up again. Seashells.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, seashells. And let's talk about them here in day one. So we begin by asking a question. Have you ever stopped to admire the delicate beauty of seashells while walking along a beach? Yes, I have. Probably not as much as I should have because I guess there are all sorts of different kinds of shells to check out.
There really are. If you go to the sea a lot or go to the ocean, you'll see lots of different varieties, you could say. I lived in a desert area of the United States, but my family would go out to the ocean at least twice a year, if not more. So we were close to California. We'd go out there. And we were always collecting seashells. I was just saying to Tom during the break, I love that when you pick up a pretty big seashell and you hold it to your ear, you think you can hear the waves of the ocean, which is kind of magic for me. So these are natural treasures. They're not produced by men, although they could be produced by machines. They don't have to be natural. And they belong to animals such as clams, oysters, and snails. They come in a variety of shapes, colors, and textures. Some of them are quite lovely. They have a lot of pastel colors. Pastel just means really light pink, light blue, yellow, light green, all of those gorgeous colors. Some of you out there are very familiar with clams. We eat a lot of clams when we eat seafood. Oysters, they've got a pretty rough shell, and sometimes those oysters will have pearls inside their shells, which are always fun to find. If you're buying them in the grocery store, don't think you're going to find pearls if you get some oysters. They've already cleaned them out. There are no pearls inside the ones at the grocery store.
Oh, the artificial pearls are better because they don't change color. They're easier to take care of. But who wants those? We want real oysters around our necks because they're so expensive.
Real pearls. No, we don't want to wear oysters.
I did want to say that oysters, of course, are a common ingredient in the oyster omelets that you can buy in night markets all over Taiwan. And, of course, these are some examples of sea creatures, also snails. They have their own kind of shell. And, yes, they come in a variety of shapes, colors, and textures. So texture just refers to whether the shell is soft, whether it's rough or whatever, whether it has designs or whatever. Those are all things that are involved with textures.
You know, it was weird. The other day I was watering my plants. I have lots of house plants inside my apartment. And the next day I went into the bathroom and crawling along the wall was a snail.
Oh, no.
And I thought, how in the world did he get into my apartment?
Yeah,
he must have been in one of the plants when I bought them originally from the market.
Could be.
And was hiding in the dirt. But it was really weird to see it in my bathroom. But I love snails even today. If it's really humid or it's been raining for quite a few days in a row, if I go walking in my neighborhood, I'll always find snails on the sidewalk.
I think there's a kind of snail in Taiwan that's invasive. It's actually from outside of Taiwan, and it's causing some problems.
With the farmers?
Yeah, I think it's the African snail, but I'm not quite sure about that. There are other kinds of snails, too, in Taiwan. But, yeah, some of them are invasive. They're from the outside, so I guess people are trying to destroy them. But they do have shells, and that's what we are talking about today. Lots of different kinds of shells, different kinds of shapes, colors, and textures. However, they are more than just pretty souvenirs. A souvenir is something you get when you're traveling to remind you of your trip there. There are all sorts of different kinds of souvenirs. You can buy a cap or something, or a refrigerator magnet or whatever. Those are all kinds of souvenirs. And a lot of people collect shells like my mother did. So, of course, if you go to different oceans in the world, you can look for a shell as a souvenir and add it to your collection. Although I'm not sure if you're supposed to take natural resources out of a country or something like that. I'm not sure if that's ethical, but people do it anyway.
Oh, I've brought home seashells before. I bought them, though, at souvenir shops.
I guess it's okay then.
Yeah, when I went to Cornwall, which is in England, it's right there on the ocean. They had a lot of stores selling beautiful seashells as souvenirs. And throughout history, seashells have served numerous purposes. If you serve a purpose, it means you have a particular job or function that you're performing in society. So they've served different purposes in human cultures worldwide, depending on where you're talking about. Anything from a practical tool that you might use to build something or to produce something else, to spiritual symbols. Maybe instead of a cross, somebody might wear a seashell around their neck as sort of a spiritual symbol, something related to their belief in God. So moving on to the next paragraph, it says seashells are formed through a natural process. Not that they can't be made by machine, but the ones we're talking about today are natural.
Yeah, indeed, and they are the hard protective outer layer of marine animals called mollusks, and are primarily composed of calcium carbonate. So that is a chemical. I think it's CaCO3, I think. It's got, of course, calcium and oxygen and carbon atoms kind of bound together. So, of course, this is a common chemical in various things. In chalk, I think calcium carbonate is common in chalk, that thing you write on blackboards with. Mm-hmm. And here we've got the phrase to compose of. That just means it's talking about the things that work together to form a whole, to form the whole thing. So it's composed of, or it's made of, calcium carbonate and maybe some other ingredients as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. Now, mollusks, you can tell it's hard to say for us. Mollusks, they can include things like the oysters and the clams, both. So you'll know it's kind of a larger family we're talking about. And they are composed of or made up of something. So to be composed of is a vocabulary phrase here. It just means that's how it's formed. It's formed from something or built from, made of or made up of. You could use all of those verb phrases. So it's composed of calcium carbonate, and the shape, size, and color of a seashell vary significantly. If it varies, it changes. It's not always the same. And it can be very, very different depending on the species and its environment, not just on the family that shell comes from, but the environment that it's surrounded by has an effect on the seashells themselves. Some, of course, are the shiny, smooth ones. The most that I have collected over time, as I've been a little girl to now, have the ridges on the outside. We're going to talk about what those are. Like
the symbol for shell oil, right?
Yeah,
that
right.
Kind of shell.
Yeah, and it's kind of a big fan kind of looking shell. It's quite they're beautiful, and they're big enough that you can put to your ear and hear things like the ocean waves coming out of them. What is a ridge, Tom?
Ridge is like the kind of edge of something. It's kind of the part that sticks out, like the ridge of the mountains, for example.
Yeah.
If it's a rocky kind of mountain and not so much a round top. We've got ridges on mountains in the central mountain range here because the mountains do have ridges or parts that stick up that are kind of jagged, I guess you could say. And so these are all parts of the texture of a seashell. So again, some have sharp ridges, so be careful. You might get cut if you pick them up. And some have curved patterns. I would also say some have spiral patterns, like a spiral staircase, for example. Those are the ones I like the most because they seem to have more variety in their shapes. It has a hole in the bottom, and then it kind of winds up like a spring or something like that. So these are different kinds of shapes and textures and surfaces and things like that. So I suppose that's one reason why people love to collect them.
Yeah, the ones that spiral up, they kind of look like a top, you know, the little toy that kids play with. Those are beautiful ones. I like those too. They're usually smaller than the size of your fist. If you're a female, my fist isn't that big. But I like those as well. My favorite potato chips have ridges on them.
I know what you're talking about.
Those little edges or lines. Yeah, those are my favorite chips because they hold more dip. I like potato chip dip. That can be different flavors. So environmental factors, though, like water temperature, how cold or hot it is, food sources, what they can eat, and predators can also impact their development. A predator is an animal that hunts and eats other animals. So there are different predators based on what that species is you're talking about. So the predators can have an impact on the development of the seashells. Also, when you talk about something impacting something else, it has an influence on it. It affects something, it changes something. So pollution, for example, can impact sea life badly. They don't do very well with plastic bags that get into the ocean, guys.
Yeah, we haven't figured that one out yet. Hopefully someday we'll find a solution to that problem. And this variety of seashells makes seashells fascinating for both collectors and scientists. So like coins and butterflies and things like that, people like to collect things. They gather different kinds of something and add them to their collection. So yes, seashells are fascinating. They're really interesting to people who collect them. And scientists are interested in learning about them. I'm sure they're finding new kinds of shells every day because there are so many different kinds of animals in the world that we haven't discovered yet.
Now, if you're a collector, what kind of person does that make you? It means that you're a person who gathers together different items of some variety. Maybe you are a collector as a hobby. There's stamp collectors. I had a sister when I was growing up who would collect spoons, little tiny cute spoons from places we went to visit as a family. I would collect either pigs, little pigs, or frogs. I don't know why, but I like both of those things. And I still have a collection of frogs in my apartment here in Taiwan. But yeah, you can collect lots of different kinds of things. I mentioned my little niece a while ago. She loves to collect seashells. That's kind of her favorite thing. And maybe that's your thing too. Maybe you go to the beach and you're looking for interesting and unique seashells.
And just for the record, Stephanie does not collect real frogs. I guess you collect little models made out of wood or glass or metal or whatever,
right,
using different materials. But most people who collect shells are looking for the real thing, and we're going to continue talking about seashells in just a couple of seconds, but right now we need to hear from our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, 我是 Patrick. 今天讲解的是暑期合刊 Unit2 Beyond the Beach.The Surprising World of Seashells 第一天的课程内容。好，那我们今天要介绍的是 Seashells 海中的贝壳。大家喜欢到海滩玩吗？夏天最适合到海边了，消暑清凉。不过除了戏水看夕阳，大家有没有在沙滩上发现过贝壳？今天的课文让我们了解贝壳有各式各样的形状、颜色、大小，也让我们知道贝壳在人类文明中有不同的意义，一度有类似货币的功能，可以交易，也可以拿来做乐器哦。好，那我们一起来看学习重点吧。那今天老师在讲解的时候，会把很多重点放在整个篇章的结构上，因为呢，在108课纲里面，对于篇章内容的理解是非常重要的。好，那我们先看到第一段。那第一段的地方，特别请同学看到第一句，其实是用问句来问读者，让读者呢去联想自己相关的经验。好，那我们看一下，请看第二个句子。好，第二个句子开头 These natural treasures。好，这边呢后面有一个这个两个逗点所夹住的这个句子，这个子句，请同学呢先略过，我们看到逗点之后 come in a variety of shapes。 好，这里所指的 these natural treasures 当然就是前面的 seashells。 那它们怎么样呢？ come in variety of shapes, colors and textures。 所以我们知道说它们的形状、颜色甚至于呢质地是各式各样的。那接下来第三个句子，老师要请大家特别注意咯。 However，记得我们在看文章的时候，看到转折词都要特别仔细小心的去看。 They are more than just pretty souvenirs。 好，这就是我们可以说整篇文章的重点了。贝壳很漂亮，可以拿来当做纪念品，当然没有错。但是呢，贝壳的用途不仅止于此。好，所以我们就看到第一段第四个句子。Throughout history, seashells have served numerous purposes in human cultures worldwide, from practical tools to spiritual symbols. 我们就知道整篇文章要告诉我们贝壳各式各样的用途。好，那请同学呢看到第二段。第二段呢，这个段落它不是典型的开展形态，第一句不算是主题句，它只是点出 general subject， 就是我们知道就是要讲贝壳这样子而已。好，那接下来呢都是进一步的去描述。那但是呢，我们要有办法找出核心概念来。其实整个段落的核心概念，同学发现了吗？就是 variety。包括我们看到第三句 very significantly。 好，这边我们就知道说它们有各式各样的差异性。那要看呢这些贝壳 到底是属于哪个物种，还有它所生存的环境。而第4句呢，就给出了我们贝壳差异性的实际例子。好，那了解了结构之后，第2段呢有1-2个重点，老师要提示大家一下，请特别注意看到第2个句子的 composed of 由什么组成，讲到呢贝壳是由碳酸钙所组成的。那再来呢，请同学看到第4个句子的这个 while， 它当作连接词，那它也是呢通常接一个很鲜明的对比，在中文当中我们通常就说而。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about seashells that are found on beaches. Seashells that come from natural sources, and they can be different kinds. We've discovered that these are natural treasures, and some of them belong to animals like clams and oysters and snails. They're the home of some of these animals, you could say. And that hard carbon, what's it called? Calcium carbonate actually protects them as they live inside that shell. Once they die, the shell remains behind, and that's what people like to collect.
Right. Shells, of course, are the protective layer of mollusks, which are soft-bodied creatures, basically like, snails and slugs and octopi. Of course, they're all mollusks. I don't know if there's such a thing as an octopi shell. I think they don't need a shell, but other creatures do. And if they did not have a shell, of course, they would be eaten right away by other predators.
Yeah.
So I guess the shell protects them from danger. And beyond their appearance, or in addition to their appearance, seashells have held deep historical and cultural significance in human history. Now, of course, we like the way shells look, and we collect them and things like that. We admire them. But people use them for different purposes, or they have throughout history, haven't they?
They sure have. We're going to go way back to ancient Greece. And in Greek mythology, of course, are these stories from ancient Greeks about their gods and goddesses. Most are supernatural, right? They don't exist on Earth. But the goddess from one of these Greek myths is called Aphrodite. She's very famous. She is the goddess, of course, of love. And she emerges... it's said that she emerged originally from the sea. So she comes from the sea and she emerged on a giant shell, which held her body. So the image has become a popular symbol of beauty and love. So if you see that sort of image, people want you to relate the seashell to beauty and love.
Right. Remember, Aphrodite is the Greek god of love, whereas Venus is the Roman one.
Yeah.
And, of course, a famous painting is The Birth of Venus. There she is standing inside a shell. So, yeah, they think she came out of a shell. It was a giant shell, really, really big.
Yeah.
And this image has become a popular symbol of beauty and love. So, yes, lots of people imagine Venus or Aphrodite coming out of a shell. So if you think of a shell, you think it means beauty. I suppose lots of women around the world wear, bracelets or necklaces made out of shells, and it makes them very beautiful. And moreover, or in addition, also, seashells have been used as currency in many regions. Okay, so this is something I did know about, having read a comic book or a comic series when I was a kid called BC. They used clams as money in that particular cartoon. You may be familiar with it, but in any case, they call them clams. And seashells, of course, have been used as currency in lots of parts of the world. Currency is just a unit of monetary exchange, like the dollar bill, for example, or coins or whatever bills. That is currency. And yes, indeed, I think in ancient China, they used those kind of crown-shaped things as currency. They passed those around. I haven't really seen any in Taiwan. They sell them mostly as souvenirs or symbols of good fortune or whatever. They sell them in stores here, but they're not real currency. You can't use them to buy something. But in any case, shells have been used for currency all over the world in different places at various times in the past.
Now let's take a look at this word moreover. Moreover is an adverb, but we use it to mean besides what we've just finished talking about, or in addition to what we just finished talking about, or also. There are lots of different synonyms. Furthermore, and besides that, or also, seashells have been used, as Tom said, as currency, as kind of a value that was similar to, let's say, gold or silver or something like that you can actually hold in your hands that's tangible. We've got one example here of the cowrie shell. It was a valuable trade item that they used in Africa and Asia and the Pacific Islands for centuries. That's when people from Africa would want something that people from Asia had. And so they would exchange those cowrie shells as money or as currency for whatever the tradesmen or merchants were selling. Same with the Pacific Islands. So why were they considered currency? Well, they were light. They were durable, which means it was hard to break them or to destroy them. Shells are pretty hard. I think you'd need a hammer on concrete to be able to break some. I've never had a shell break on me that didn't hit another surface with a lot of force. So durable means they're really strong, and they were widely available, which makes it a good thing for currency.
Right. I did want to mention that sometimes, of course, when you go to the beach looking for shells, it might be kind of hard to find a complete one. A lot of times they're just bits and pieces of shells. You don't want those. You want the whole shell. So, of course, if you have whole shells, in the past, they could be used as currency. Hey, I want to buy a pound of sugar from you. Here's like 20 shells or whatever. Oh, no problem. Let's make a deal. Now, in addition, many indigenous communities created tools and even musical instruments from sturdy seashells. Okay, so here sturdy is very similar in meaning to durable. They just are not broken easily. And these are indigenous communities. Indigenous just refers to the people who originally lived in a place. Like, of course, we have got the indigenous people here in Taiwan, the Amis, the Atayal, etc. Those are all indigenous peoples. And a community, of course, is when people get together and form a society.
Yeah, they even made musical instruments from really rough, sturdy, strong seashells. Here's an example. For instance, a conch shell typically comes from a large sea snail. If you've seen the conch shell, you know that they're really big. I didn't know what these were until I saw a cooking show. And then you see it spelled and it looks like it's conch. Conch is the pronunciation for British English, but in America we say conch shell, and it's huge, and I wouldn't typically want to eat this large sea snail, Tom. They would pull it out of the shell, and I'd think, yuck, I don't want to eat that. But these conch shells were used to be made into a wind instrument. You'd blow into it, and then it would emit or produce a really cool sound. So these are just some examples of what shells have been used for. Right now, we're running out of time. We're going to listen to our Chinese teacher one more time, and then we'll be back to wrap up.
好，那请同学接着看第3个段落。老师要请大家特别注意的是，这个段落在发展的时候，其实作者用了很多转成的词语呢，把不同的概念串接起来。所以请同学特别注意像 moreover、in addition 这些词汇。好，那我们先看到第一个句子，其实 beyond 这个字也用得非常的好，因为呢前面这个段落主要呢是在讲贝壳它的这个外观。好，所以 beyond their appearance, seashells have held deep historical and cultural significance in human history. 那这可以说是整个段落的重点。接下来就是要跟我们谈它贝壳在历史还有文化上到底有什么样的重要性。好，那我们看一下这里老师刚刚讲到的重要的转成词，包括第4个句子的 moreover， 就是呢在讲到前面说到希腊神话里面，当然因为呢 Aphrodite 她是代表爱还有美的女神，那当然同学可能比较熟悉的是 Venus， 那其实呢我们可以说Venus 她是罗马神话当中和这个希腊神话的 Aphrodite 对应的女神，她们同样都是代表爱、美丽、欲望还有生育的。好，那我们看到在解释完之后要进入下一个概念的时候，要介绍说贝壳呢也可以当作货币使用， 作者所使用的转承时是 moreover， 那这是值得同学学习的，我们把它画起来。那再来呢，接着我们就看到第6个句子咯。第6个句子又要再进入下一个概念，因为作者告诉我们说，贝壳也可以拿来做乐器。In addition, many indigenous communities created tools and even musical instruments from sturdy seashells. 那当然不是随随便便的任何一种贝类，是比较坚固的 sturdy seashells。好，那以上呢就是我们针对贝壳这一篇课文内容所做的第一天的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's all the time we have for today, everybody. But shells are such a fascinating topic that we're going to talk about it in our program next time. So make sure you join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.